Awesome. Well, today's guest obviously doesn't need any introduction, but I'm just so excited to have you. Susana Cordova, she is the Colorado Commissioner of Education. And to me, super special to have you here because I know that you went to high school at Lincoln.
Yeah.
So there are so many memories that I'm sure you have that you might want to share. And that's why I wanted to start looking at the yearbook so we can bring some memories for the past, and then we'll just go from there. So let's just have fun bringing some memories back, and maybe I can ask you a question as you look at the yearbook, so you can maybe tie some of those pictures with those memories. I wanted to ask you, how old were you the first time you walked into Abraham Lincoln High School, and what was that moment like for you?
Sure.
What memories you have?
You know, it's funny because I can never walk into Lincoln without like simultaneously being myself today and myself as, you know, a probably 14 turning 15-year-old getting ready to start high school. When I came to high school here, high school started at 10th grade. 9th grade was in junior high school at the time. And so I was transitioning into 10th grade and, you know, coming into a much bigger school. I went to Kepner right here in the neighborhood, and then I just have such a strong memory of like walking into the auditorium for orientation and, you know, knowing a few people, but not everybody, and so many kids from so many different schools coming in. Yeah, it's like flooding with memories for sure.
How many kids were here?
You know, it was interesting. So I was in school in the early 1980s, and the neighborhood was very, very different. I was trying to think about like what the exact demographics were, but I bet it was probably like between 40-ish% white, 40-ish% Latino, and like 10 or 12% Vietnamese. When I came to school in this neighborhood was right after the big influx of Vietnamese and Cambodian people at the end of the Vietnam War. And then a real small percentage of black students. So very different demographics for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was into drama. So that's a lot of the pictures you'll see in the yearbook are from like the drama club or from speech. I was in speech.
That's awesome.
Speech team, yeah. So,
if you don't mind, any of those pictures that you like, we can also share with the audience in this recording.
So my junior year, we did the musical Gypsy, which is sort of funny when you think about it for a high school, because if you don't know, the story Gypsy is about a stripper. And so it's kind of like, I don't think we would do that today. Probably, I'm not sure that we would. But I actually had a great drama teacher while I was here, Ron Engel. And for people who've been in DPS for a long time, his son-in-law was Dan Viescas, who was a principal in the district for a long time, still an educator, working, I think, out of state. But he was a great drama teacher. We did great drama productions. He was our speech coach. So I was really involved in those sorts of things. I was kind of nerdy. Yeah. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Such just good memories from back then. I see on some of the pictures, I had a chance to look at the yearbook before you looked at them, and I see you, like you look in your element with some of the drama, like the club, the group of people you were. You look very comfortable, like it. At least from the pictures, looks like you were having fun.
Well, and you know, actually, like the people I'm closest with today are people that I knew from junior high school and high school. So my best friends I met in 7th grade. They grew up in the Westwood neighborhood, and we went to Kepner together. They were twin sisters, actually, who one of them worked at CMS for a long time, and they're both teachers in Denver public schools now. So our lives, in many ways, you know, got their start here in Southwest Denver, and we've just stayed close ever since.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you a second to look at those pictures to see what memories you bring.
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you, so like you have to think back to the early 80s and all of the styles and all of the different clothes. And I remember my junior year, I came to picture day. And actually, you know, the way we did registration was super cool. We did like college style registration. So you came and you stood at different tables to register for classes, and teachers let you register for the classes as they were available until they got filled up. And so you got to just like look around the cafeteria to see like what electives were open and, do it that way. It was really, there was like not the master scheduling that we do nowadays. It was very, very different. But we took our pictures, we built our schedules. I wore a sweet flash dance headband.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty funny.
There's a picture of you wearing
wearing my headband, yeah. And then the next day, I got my hair cut, and it was very new wave, like punk rocky. The very next day, so I got it cut very, very short, and so it's kind of funny to think. My 10th grade year, the drama club took a trip to London, and so I went on a trip with the drama club, and that visited London. I think it was probably the first time I was on an airplane. For sure, the first time I was overseas. We saw, plays on the West End. I mean, it was really cool.
Wow.
It was a really great experience.
What a good memory.
Yeah. I also feel like I got a really great education here at Lincoln. I got a scholarship. The man who was the Spanish teacher here at the time, Mr. Eddie Cordova, we were not related, took Latino kids under his wing and just made sure like my parents knew how to fill out financial aid forms, introduced me to people at the University of Denver, and helped me get a scholarship to go to DU. If I hadn't had him helping me, for sure I would not have gone to a private school. Mm-hmm. It probably cost my parents less to go there than it would have gone to CU Boulder, frankly. And when I got to DU, I felt really, really well prepared. I feel like I got a really great academic education here at Lincoln.
And I would say also the middle school and the elementary school you went to, like you had,
sure,
I would guess.
Yeah, I was in elementary school in between 3rd grade and 4th grade is when Denver started desegregation. And so there was a real push at that point in time to really make sure that there were integrated opportunities. That's how I got into the arts, was through the work around desegregation. There were summer programs that brought kids from all over the city together to do plays and drama. There was a citywide choir that brought kids from all over the city to sing on Saturdays together.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I could still sing you some of the songs that I learned from elementary school during that time. And so I think like during those desegregation days, there was a real emphasis on making sure that kids from every school and every community had access to opportunities that, for sure, my mom went to DPS. She didn't have those kind of opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so it really made a big difference. It gave me access to AP classes. It gave me access to the kind of support for scholarships
that you needed.
That really made a big difference.
I didn't know your mom went to DPS too.
Mm-hmm. My mom graduated from West High School.
Oh, okay.
Class of 63 at West, and she's actually still really involved at West.
She?
She runs a food bank at West that distributes about 80 packages of food a week to families in need.
Wow, that's so special.
Yeah. She's turning 80 this year.
Really?
And she still does that.
She's still moving around, pretty active.
Still doing it, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about your Spanish? Do you ever study Spanish formally, or do you cultivate it from home?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So both of my parents, their first language was Spanish. My father didn't learn English until he started school. My father was born in southern Colorado in a small town called Walsenburg. My mother was born in New Mexico but moved to Denver when she was about 2 years old. And my mother's family was always bilingual. But really, by the time they got to school, it was during the time when, parents really didn't want their kids speaking Spanish. So I grew up really in an English-only household. I did not speak Spanish at home. Things like cállate. That was about the extent of it. And here's a true story. I learned Spanish as in as an adult, like after college is when I learned Spanish. And it wasn't until I was taking Spanish classes that I suddenly realized that my dad was not calling me sweetheart when he called me fea, which is kind of funny. For those of you who don't speak Spanish in the audience, fea means ugly, but he always used it as a term of endearment. And so I always thought it meant like sweetheart until I learned. I thought the neighbors next to my grandmother's house, I thought their last name was Vecino because they would always tell me, take this to the Vecinos. And I was like, take this to the Smiths. So I thought that was their last name. So I didn't learn that until I was an adult. And it was actually when I was at Lincoln, I took French the 3 years that I was at Lincoln. Great French teacher here at Lincoln, Miss Valerie Lehman. I tested out of a full year of French when I got to college.
Wow.
Which is actually pretty remarkable for somebody who had never gone to a French-speaking country who only had high school French to be able to do that. But I would say it was really because I felt very disconnected from my cultural identity while I was here at Lincoln. And got a lot of messages. Like, I got a great education here, and I have like tremendous gratitude to my teachers, but I got a lot of messages like, oh, you need to get educated so you can get out of your neighborhood, like those kind of messages. And so I didn't really want to take Spanish. And then when I got to college is when I decided I wanted to take Spanish. I learned Spanish very quickly because I had taken so much French. I did 3 years in high school and 3 years in college. And then after I graduated from college, went to Mexico and learned Spanish in Guadalajara and came back to Denver to work as a bilingual teacher.
That's fantastic. I have had conversations with you in Spanish before, and you don't have an accent. Mm-hmm. You know, when somebody speaks English as the first language and then they learn Spanish, you can tell that there is like my accent in English. Right. You don't.
Oh, in Spanish?
No. That's interesting.
I don't know if that's actually true. And I had a lot of ambient Spanish in my family, of course, and I was a bilingual teacher, and I worked all of the schools where I was a school leader were bilingual programs, and I put a lot of energy into learning Spanish, but there are still like lots of words, lots of phrases that I make mistakes with. And,
that's part of I guess part of the trajectory of living in a country where you have to, I guess no matter what you do professionally, you have to cultivate your English in a more formal academic setting, and at some point you get more used to it.
Sure.
I would say that it takes more intentional focus in keeping your Spanish polished and academically sharp.
Yes.
Because the settings where you use Spanish typically are not as academic as the setting where you're using it in English. Yeah. And for me, I feel it as well.
Sure.
I love my language, but at times I find myself, how come I'm forgetting this sentence structure or things like that? But it's part of that, I guess.
Well, I have an adult daughter who introduced me to Duolingo. So I do Duolingo in Spanish every day. And it's actually been really great for me to just practice, all of the, genders and using lo versus le and exposing me to words that I would not typically know because I didn't grow up speaking Spanish and I didn't really go through school to learn it academically. And so
like
really
the
helpful.
Articles and all those things.
All of those things,
La, los, li.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Mm-hmm. So what does Lincoln represent to you? What does it mean to you now that you've gone through many other places to educate yourself and now you come back, and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it is always so fascinating to step back into the building because, as I said, I feel like the teenager that I was and all of the anxiety that I felt as a teenager, and so much of what I think this neighborhood represents today, and particularly the opportunity that Lincoln represents for a mostly immigrant community. I even just a little bit ago as we were walking through the school, seeing a principal who can talk to students in Spanish and what that represents. I really wish I had that kind of opportunity. So there's a little bit of the nostalgia for things that did exist, but also kind of the regret over what wasn't here during that time. There wasn't nearly the kind of support around my cultural identity in a way that it feels very different today. And, over the years when I've been back, seeing the graduates of Lincoln who've had opportunities, to introduce President Obama. Like I was here when Obama was in front of the building, and to see the young woman valedictorian introduce him was really powerful. It was a really powerful statement to me to think about what happens when you invest in a community and what that does for not just the individuals, but the generations who will follow them because of the opportunities that they can have here.
Yeah, I agree. I was here as a teacher when Obama came. I actually started my career in DPS here at Lincoln. Yeah. Started as a teacher and then left, and now I'm back as a principal. It's so awesome. Cool. And the Spanish, the culture, to me is very special and very important too. I every time I have a chance to speak in Spanish or to talk about our place of origin with our kids. Right now we have a significant Venezuelan population, and I'm Venezuelan too. So I love to ask them where in Venezuela they're from, or their favorite food and their families. But we also have the Latino population continues to be prevalent here. Sure. So to me,
the Latino and Chicano community that have been here
forever,
for a long time,
for a very, very long time. And you see the Chicano presence in the student body, but I noticed the Chicano presence more in the adults who signed up to be coaches, to be volunteers. Like the Chicanos, the adult Chicanos, they really want to remain connected to Lincoln. And for example, my wrestling coaches, my baseball coaches, some teachers, and it really is special in the sense that you're describing it, which is
kids see pride.
Kids see themselves in the adults. So it's pretty cool. I love it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited that you're here. Remembering some of those times when you were a kid. But now you're the commissioner of education. You've gone through this long trajectory of leadership. And I wanted to ask you, and for the audience too, what is the role of a commissioner of education? What is at the heartbeat of what you do? And just to understand a little bit about.
So in Colorado, the Department of Education has as its main purpose supporting our districts across the state. I work for an elected state board of education that has people elected from all over the state. It's not like our local school board election. It's actually a partisan election, so people run as Democrats or Republicans. There are 9 of them, and after the most recent election in November, we have 5 Democrats and 4 Republicans, so a very kind of balanced state board of education. Our primary responsibility, so if you want to become a teacher and get a license, you come to the Department of Education, or a principal license, or superintendent. We adopt the standards for the state, and so, the information about what we teach at every grade comes from the Department of Education and the state board.
Okay.
We administer the state assessments. So when kids take the SAT or the 3rd grade reading CMAS, that comes from our department. And we also do all of the ratings for schools and districts. So when a school is rated, meets expectations.
The SPF, the School Performance
Framework, comes from the State Department of Education. So we think of our job as 3 things. It's to serve, to make sure that we're supporting districts with the resources, the tools, the professional development that they need. To guide, so that's all of the guidance around state law, federal law, the rules that the state board creates for requirements. And then to elevate, which I think is the really fun part of our work, which is to tell the great stories of things that are happening in education. And to profile teachers, profile programs, profile schools, and to get the word out about the great things that are happening.
In schools.
With teachers. We do things like on our social media channels, we have a Teacher Tuesday profile every Tuesday. We talk about a teacher, show them not just in their school, but like, what are their hobbies? What do they love to do? You know, why did they become teachers? We're right now taking applications for the Colorado Teacher of the Year.
Okay.
So if you have a teacher you love, you should nominate them.
Oh my God.
I'm sure you have
We got
many.
a few, huh, Javi?
Yep. Yep.
One of the things that we're doing now with Javi is we're identifying the exemplary classrooms.
Yes.
And we go and record them.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
And we get clips, like 10, 15 minutes, Javi, of like exemplary part of the instructional piece. And then we bring that video to my instructional leadership team. So we all observe that teacher and calibrate our practices, calibrate action steps and
just
practices.
look at what great teaching looks like. Yeah.
Yes. And so we have a few. I'm actually really proud of the teachers that we have here. Obviously, you know, as my first year as a principal, there's always a new vision that kicks in. And so things shift with regards to what you defined as what kids needs and what best practices you can put in place in relationship to what our kids need. But yeah, I will be happy to nominate a handful of our teachers.
Yeah, and nominations are open through March 17th. So
17th.
you can go to the Colorado Department of Education website, and the very first thing you'll see is Colorado Teacher of the Year, nominations open. And so it's really easy to nominate people. And then after people have been nominated, they're invited to apply to become the Teacher of the Year. I'll brag on our Colorado Teacher of the Year this year. It's Janet Damon, who also teaches in Denver Public Schools. She's a teacher. Janet Damon. I don't know if you know her. She's a teacher at Delta on the George Washington campus. And she's actually a finalist for the National Teacher of the Year. She's one of 4 finalists for National Teacher of the Year.
Wow.
We'll find out in April if she wins it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's great.
So that's a super fun part of your job, just to get to see excellence across the state.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I worked in Denver for 31 years, so I know a lot about big districts. I know a lot about how Denver works. You know, I did a lot of collaboration with the metro area superintendents. But part of what's been really fun in this role has been, you know, going out all around the state, looking at districts, you know, in the mountains, on the plains, you think about southwestern Colorado. The big district there is Durango. That's going to be about 8,000 students. And then like the little districts that, you know, we have 95, there are 178 districts in Colorado. 95 of them have 500 or fewer students.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, so there are 95 districts in Colorado that have 500 or fewer kids.
Wow.
So you think about that, you know, we have elementary schools that have 500 students in big urban districts like Denver. And there are some districts where every kid fits into one building, K through 12. And, you know, our smallest district probably is like around 30 kids. K-12.
You're making me think. One time I met a superintendent from one of the rural areas of Colorado, and he told me, I'm the superintendent, but I also have to drive the bus for my kids to do the bus route.
Sure.
And to me, it was hard to make sense of it, because my reference of superintendents are people like you or all the other DPS superintendents. But that makes sense in a way.
Sure. And how many students here at Lincoln?
At Lincoln this year, we started at 956.
So you're on the side of districts. Like if Lincoln were a school district, you'd be on the side of the bigger districts in Colorado, not the littler ones.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. So as the commissioner, you oversee and support. That's interesting. I didn't think about it that way, but you're supporting also with curriculum. I guess not necessarily curriculum, but the standards.
The standards
that need to be the standards that students need to show mastery.
That's right.
To be a grade level K through 12.
Yeah, and we do things like this past summer, we brought together a group of teachers to create math toolkits. You know, so we adopt the math standards, and then we don't adopt curriculum, but we did bring math teachers together to put together, you know, tools and resources that math teachers could use that align to the standards, to try to make more user-friendly tools and resources available. All of this is open, free on our website.
Great.
And is another way that we can do service to the field.
And then I guess as an extension or in connection with that work, then you have standardized assessments.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Which is, so you will say CMAS, PSAT?
Yeah, CMAS, PSAT, and SAT.
How about Access?
Access is one of our assessments that we use, yep.
AP wouldn't be, because AP is more College Board.
Yeah, so the PSAT and SAT are College Board assessments. They are part of the school performance framework. The AP tests that schools can select to use are also from the College Board. They don't necessarily feed in to the school performance framework, so they're outside of the department.
Okay.
But we work really closely with the College Board.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then you have this school performance framework, which is, I guess, the mechanism to compile school effectiveness based on student mastery of the standard and performing on those assessments.
Yeah, performing on those assessments and a whole bunch of other things too. Yeah, so it's sort of the school report card, if you will, that looks at a whole variety of different ways to think about school quality. There's actually been a really big committee that's been working for 18 months to make recommendations around changes to the school performance framework.
I heard.
Yeah. And, I think it has some really common sense recommendations, how to make sure that, we're including more, at high school in particular, more of the post-secondary indicators, that we're thinking about the importance of standardized testing and other indicators of readiness.
Yeah.
Certainly I think it's important how well kids test, and there are other ways to show that kids are ready.
Yep.
I think, at a place like Lincoln in particular, with your P-TECH program, with the student demographics and the multilingual learners, an SAT may always be harder for kids.
For sure.
Frequently they're taking the test in their second language. They may not have been in the United States for that long, and they might be able to show their readiness in a college class in a different way than they would in a one-time 3-hour test.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
The transient piece of being an immigrant, especially with this year, the last couple of years, but this year, since it's my first year at Lincoln, I've noticed it since January, actually, we had, I'll have to look exactly a number, but over 70 kids have left Lincoln since January 6th.
Yeah.
With some of the, the political landscape and so on. So many of our kids leave the city.
Yeah.
Or go back to another state or go back to their home country. So that transient element makes it harder for us to measure with accuracy students' growth over time on those standardized assessments. So we're always looking for other venues to measure our students' growth and progress. So it's pretty. It is, I guess, in a school like this with our demographics, it is always tricky to find the most accurate way to measure student progress. But the other metrics are always also a great indicator, like their dropout rates or their passing, But I also was curious because as a superintendent, and you were the superintendent of DPS for a while, I'm wondering what are because right now as a commissioner, you also are entertaining these engaging in these conversations that you also did as a superintendent. But I'm wondering what are the key differences between one and the other.
Well, it was funny. When I interviewed for this job, I did say, when I was a superintendent, here's what I wanted from the Department of Education. I wanted the money and stay out of my way. So it's not lost on me that there are times when our districts, understandably, really feel like they want the opportunity to focus on their work and to not have a bunch of barriers put in their way. And the resources really do matter. And so it's really important to be able to get those resources to the places that need them most. And it is really different in our small districts. Our small districts, you think about a place like Denver or Aurora or Boulder or Colorado Springs even, there's just a different level of funding and capacity around professional development or trainings or curriculum or resources. You get into the small districts where it's the superintendent who's the bus driver and the grant writer, they really do need outside support around training, around special education in particular, some of those aspects where the department really does need to play a bigger role.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially because of the size.
Yeah.
What is the biggest goal? What is the biggest project that you're working right now towards?
Yeah, so we launched a new strategic plan. We have 4 focus areas that really, I think, resonated with the field. We tried as much as possible to get superintendent input on what should we be working on. And so it's increasing student engagement. Kids can't learn if they're not in school.
Yeah.
Super important. I think it's been hard, particularly since January. And we're definitely seeing like ups and downs with attendance. And so really working hard to make sure we get kids in school every day. The second area is accelerating student outcomes with a real focus on 3rd grade reading. And then at the high school level, making sure kids graduate with one of 3 things, either 12 college credits, a work-based certificate, or a work-based learning experience that's connected to a high-demand job.
Okay.
So we want to graduate kids with either credits or experiences that get them ready for the next step. The third priority is strengthening the educator workforce, and that's making sure that we have enough teachers with the right qualifications for the jobs that we know we need in Colorado. And then the last area is providing operational excellence. It's making sure that we're a good place to work for the people who work for CDE. When we take care of our people, they do a better job supporting the field and making sure that we're, providing great service.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Easy stuff.
Yeah. So, we've set like really concrete goals that we're trying to monitor, working hard at like hearing from the field, what supports help. We launched attendance campaign. Denver has really done some really neat things that we've tried to profile and share. We're not teaching kids at the department.
Right.
And so all of this work that we're doing is about how do we showcase the very best practices in the field and create the kind of learning environment where districts can learn from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's... you're making me think of the role of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Those learning models, language models through AI. How much time have you spent thinking about that, or what conversations have you had around the future of education and the integration of AI tools into the next generation? I have 2 boys at home. I have 3 boys, but my 2 youngest are 10 and 8. They cannot imagine their lives without technology.
Sure.
And I'm introducing them to ChatGPT and Grok, and they are just having fun asking them questions. And
it's pretty amazing.
I cannot, when I think of like, and this is a question that I would like for you to just like hash out with me. What will classroom instruction look like 10, 15, 20 years from now? When we assess standards, or when we measure the way kids learn, when we explore the multiple intelligence that every person can develop, what is, from your perspective, what do you think the role is of artificial intelligence, or what are classrooms going to look like?
I think there are some things that are never going to go away.
Okay.
So we need kids to be critical thinkers. One of the most important things, like, artificial intelligence is not going to go away, is an incredibly powerful tool. And in the absence of critical thinking, I think we will have generations of young people who can't tell if something is misinformation or disinformation, who will not be able to assess, does this even make sense? Should it make sense? Should I use it now? I think there's a lot that we need to do. There's been a lot of conversation around, it's not necessarily like there's suddenly more cheating that's happening. Like, there's been cheating forever. When I was in high school at Lincoln, we always used to talk about, like, the day before a big assignment was due and we hadn't read the book, that we always used to say we were going to go on a date with Cliff. Because back in those days, it was a Cliff's Notes, which then turned into Sparks Notes that you could get online. So when you were back in the Stone Ages, for me, they were little booklets that were condensed versions of Macbeth. that I hadn't read, and then you would read the Cliff's Notes version of Macbeth to like get yourself oriented around it. Like there's been cheating forever.
Yeah.
It's whether or not we're teaching kids how to be thinkers. That is not going to go away. Like there is always going to be a need for teachers. There's always going to be a need for apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. I think it does give us the opportunity to think differently about what do we spend our time on.
Yes.
Like
yes.
when you or I were in school, we spent a lot of time on things like penmanship and times tables. Mm-hmm. Like we don't necessarily spend the same amount of time, but kids need to know enough about times tables to be able to estimate and figure out, is that a plausible answer? Mm-hmm. So it's not going to go away.
Yep.
But, I don't know about you. I use a calculator as much as I do times tables in my head now. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we'll have to keep up with the pace of change, but some of those things are never going to go away. Like teachers are always going to be important. Apprenticeships are always going to be important. The ability to like do the hands-on work. Mm-hmm. And the hands-on work is like in a language arts class, it's like the revising, the editing, does this flow and make sense? Mm-hmm. That's never going to go away.
I agree. I also think that the academic portion, the academic experience of the school life can become more and more convenient with AI tools. Mm-hmm. So the amount of work that a teacher spends developing a lesson plan can be conveniently developed with the support of AI tools, or the amount of resources, the integration of audio visual in the learning experience of the kid. I can totally see AI tools making that job way more convenient and perhaps even better than a teacher. But my agreement with what you're sharing is that the teacher, the human element of the teaching side will always, in fact, it might become even more and more and more important because teachers and kids might have the convenience of going through this tool to learn U.S. history or civics or math or science or about cells. But what happens when you're not learning academics? What is the other part of the schooling experience?
Well, or what happens if you're not learning about social interactions? What happens if you're not learning, there's been a lot written about young people today. They call it the slow generation. Yeah. Like kids are growing up slower. Mm-hmm. There are some good things about that. There's some aspects of that where it's like they're engaging in less risky behavior. Mm-hmm. Kids drive later. Yeah. They are engaging in, drinking at older ages as opposed to younger ages, or in less early sex. Like things that are probably lifelong are going to be good. But the flip side of that is I think we see more loneliness. Yeah. I see kids date less and at older ages. And so some of the opportunity is to create school experiences around human interaction as opposed to, I've been really impressed with the schools that have put in policies around restricted cell phone use. Mm-hmm. And part of what I've heard from principals is kids are talking in the hallway where they weren't talking before, or at lunchtime, high school kids are playing games. Yeah. Whereas before, it's just so easy to go on your phone and ignore people.
And just disconnect.
Just disconnect.
And high school is just the perfect, middle schools. Sure. But school in general, I would say, is the perfect setting for you to exercise those social skills. Sure. We don't see them. Yeah. We don't see them as much. Yeah. And that's one of the things that perhaps the education model or the environment of a school might, pivot towards enhancing or paying more attention to the
well, and especially if teachers can spend less time on lesson planning or grading or things like that, it actually frees up some of their time for more of the interactive, activity-based things. I mean, I use AI, if not every day, almost every day. And I guess, realistically, I probably every day because I use my maps. I use, Siri, navigation, those sort of things. Call so-and-so. I'm using those sort of things just as a regular basis. We don't think of that as AI, but it is. Yeah. But I also use it I have to plan a meeting. Help me think about an engaging way to do X. Mm-hmm. I have to edit something. This is a confusing paragraph. Help me rewrite this. Mm-hmm. I use it all the time.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit in this conversation and talk about your leadership, but more on a personal level with regards to your habits of leadership. Sure. I am in the middle of my career. This is my year 15th as an educator, so I know I still have at least
Sure.
have.
Yeah.
And every time I feel lucky, I'm lucky enough to have someone like you. I want to ask him questions about how do you stay sharp? How do
Yeah.
you stay engaged, fired up, passionate about the leadership you do? And specifically, what are your habits, your
Yeah.
leadership habits, physically, mentally, spiritually?
Sure.
What do you do to always remain a high performer?
Yeah. I would not have said this about myself, even 5 years ago. But one of the things I think, particularly at this stage of my career, this is my 35th year in education. So
Uh-huh.
it's kind of fun to think about, like, halfway. You're kind of at the halfway point. 5 years ago, I made some really big changes. Like, I had worked in Denver for my entire career, and then in 2020, at the end of 2020, left Denver. And in some ways, it was like one of the very best choices I ever made because I learned so much. I had not been in an environment where I had to learn so much, like from people, places, how to get around, lived in a new city, had to like learn all of the new things. Like, learning new things, 100% I think keeps you sharp. And so one of the tips I would give people is, if you're in the same place, figure out something new that you can learn. It doesn't even have to be work related, but just get yourself into a space where you're using your brain on new learning in a new and different way. I think that makes a huge, huge, huge difference. I called it my Alzheimer's prevention plan because so much about staying sharp is being able to engage in new and different ways. So that was one of the things. The other thing I would say is whatever it is that speaks to keeping yourself balanced, you have to do. For some people, I think it's prayer. For some people, I think, like, I'm a big believer in the Stoics, and so I read the Stoics all the time. And like the quote that I was reading today was it was something sort of like, don't cry about the past. You have no control over that. Don't worry about the future. You don't know what is coming. Like, focus on the present. And that has really helped me a lot, particularly in challenging times, because I think it's really easy to get caught up in regret about miscomings, failures, mistakes, any of those things.
Yeah.
And like, you can't undo it. No. So like, let it go. And I think it's really easy to get caught up in like worrying about what happens if. It's not even here.
That's one of the pillars of Stoicism, being in the present moment.
Yeah.
Who do you read? I have the letters of Marcus Aurelius and Ryan Daly. I don't know if you know him.
Yep, I do. I am using the Daily Stoic Journal
You
this
do?
year. Yes.
I have his trilogy. I have The Obstacle is the Way,
Yep.
Stillness is the Key,
Yep.
and what's the other one? I think I have him.
The Daily Stoic, probably.
I don't know that I have him here,
Yeah.
but I live by it.
Yeah.
I have the Obstacle is the Way is it's on my office at home, and he says, and Marcus Aurelius actually says that, he says what gets in the way becomes the way.
Yeah.
So don't hope for not having obstacles.
Right.
Just hope for being able to, when they come, identify them and become stronger.
Yep. One of my favorite quotes recently has been, who would Hercules be without the lion, the hydra, the boar? And it goes on to say something like, he probably would just roll over and go back to sleep. And even if he did, what use would that great physique be if he did not face challenges? And like, that has really been a good reminder. It's like why be a leader if you're not going to have challenges?
That's it.
Like, at the end of the day, I mean, I think especially like growing up in a Mexican family where there's such a premium on hard work, I just don't expect life to be easy.
That's it. Yes.
And, especially you look at the kids here, like, my job can be hard, but, I go home to a nice house with a warm bed and plenty of meals and food and comfort. There are people who are really working hard for almost no money. And like, my life is a gift, and I feel like I owe it to others to work hard and to face these challenges.
You are not saying it directly, but that's another Stoic premise, which is gratitude, right? Like how you know, how many things you have that you give for granted.
Yeah.
And like the immigrant perspective is always keep me on check with regards to how many blessings I have. It is hard to be a principal, as you know, and any principal watching this. But at the end of the day, you're going home to a family to, you know, you can adjust the thermostats. You can pour yourself a hot cup of tea or take a hot shower. So many things that we give for granted. So that's awesome. So the way you stay sharp, the way that you is by, I guess, reading and exercising that like spiritual element of.
Yeah, and like I would say the other thing is like take care of the people you love. It's really easy in these jobs. You know, I think particularly for
that's very
I was
true.
superintendent at a really hard time in DPS's history, and like wasn't always able to make the time for my family.
Yes.
And I think the other thing that just is a way to stay sharp is to like put things in perspective and make sure that you have that balance of like, this is a job, it's a really important job, but at the end of the day, like our families really are our lives. And we will do a better job at our job if we do a good job with our families.
I agree. And especially with my kids being 10 and 8, I'm their superhero.
Yeah.
I'm superhero daddy. And I go home and they really don't ask me if I had a good or a bad day. They just want me to be present and be with them and go out and play. And they keep me active too. And I always go back to the idea of family, what they mean to you. And I know your family is also a very important element in your
Somebody
life.
said to me recently, and it's so true, there are people who are paying attention to how long you work. But it's not the people you think they are, and they don't appreciate it. And it's just such an important reminder. It's like, you know, I think about when I was superintendent, it was the end of the year. My daughter was a senior while I was superintendent. It was the end of the year. The board had already started going kind of sour on me. I was in kind of like this tricky place. And I chose to go to a board meeting and not to my daughter's senior awards night.
Gosh.
Like, none of those board members care that I went to the board meeting. My daughter still remembers that I didn't go to a senior awards night. And so I would just say, like, make the right choices. That was not the right choice. Yeah.
But you're in the moment. You're trying to get things, you're doing the best you can to do things right. And
sure. And I mean, that was a little bit like worrying about the future and not thinking about the moment. Because I was thinking, like, if I do this thing in the future, I can, like, do this other thing. And if I had really just been thinking about the moment, I would have gone to my daughter's award night.
I have this question for you about family. What is a favorite family moment from the last few years that still lights you up?
Yeah. So last summer, you know, I've got a 30-year-old son who's a teacher just down the street. I have a 24-year-old daughter who just this last year finished her master's program. She did a master's program in Europe.
Okay.
She has a boyfriend who's in medical school right now. She's working in California, but this last summer, my husband, me, my 2 kids, my daughter's boyfriend, all went to Italy together.
Nice.
And so it was great. We spent time in Florence. We rented a house in the countryside, did like some fun day trips. And it was just like such a, you know, especially when we were in Tuscany. We were far away from everything. Like there wasn't really television. It was just like completely disconnected. It was just family time.
What time of the year?
Summer. We had a pool, so that was nice, you know. It was great. And it's hard to know when everybody will be able to have time off at the same time again, you know. It just worked out really nicely that people could get that kind of time away.
Yeah.
So.
And have the coincidence of having that time off at the same time.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
This was great.
You've been so generous with your time today. I have 2 more questions, and one is a silly one.
Okay.
What is an unusual habit or silly thing that you love to do that might surprise us?
Oh, I don't know. You're making me think of this silly thing because of the comment about family. So one of our traditions in our family is on people's birthdays, we silly string them. And so we always, it's always like a big, like, will they, won't they kind of moment. We do it probably not every year, but close to every year, not quite everybody. So you're never exactly sure if it's going to happen or not happen. Sometimes we try to do it in places where they think it won't happen, like at a restaurant, and then you have to clean it up. But that's a really fun thing that we do.
That's cool. So you do catch them by surprise?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A little bird told me, Darlene Ledoux, she told me that you are a good baker. Do you like to bake?
Oh, I love to bake, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I do love to bake.
What are your go-to recipes?
The reason Darlene is saying that probably is I've really tried to keep some of the New Mexican traditions alive.
Nice, okay.
And so every year at Christmas time, I make empanadas de carne dulce.
Yummy.
So like sweetmeat turnovers, I guess is what you would call them in English, which is a very New Mexican Christmas treat. Bizcochitos, which is a big deal. But yeah,
Stuff like that.
Stuff like that.
So winter, Christmas time, Thanksgiving time is where you show off your...
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, your story has always been inspiring to me. I've been following and admiring and respecting your journey since 14 years ago, 15 years ago when I started in DPS.
Yeah.
So having you here is a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm very grateful for that, especially because your journey indirectly, obviously, I know when you were in DPS and then you left and then now you're back. Such a trailblazer for Latinos, Latinas. I have heard, I've been in conversations where you've shared some of your story before as well. So I'm very grateful. And I couldn't finish this episode with asking you for a final message to young leaders, to parents who are trying to navigate their educational journey of their kids, to the educational system in general. What is a message that you want to leave us with as we move on with our journeys?
Yeah. You know, and I would, especially to the young people here at Lincoln, I will say to you what I wish somebody had said to me at when I was in high school, which is like, don't let fear stop you from doing things. You know, for so many of our young people, the world that they know is the world that is immediately around them. And the world is so much larger. And like, take your rightful place in it. You come with gifts, you come with talents, and the way you get the experiences is to step out. And if I could give every kid at Lincoln a gift, it would be like, have the courage to do the big, scary things that feel like they're too hard to do.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a message for kids and for grown-ups.
Yeah, for grown-ups too. I try to tell myself that still.
We as adults
Yeah.
sometimes are even more fearful than kids. We get so used to the routines and to what it is.
So true.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
you.
you. Thanks
Really
for the
appreciate it.
invitation.
Hopefully you have a little bit of time after this recording so you can actually look at the
I know,
yearbook
it's so
and get
fun.
some pictures.
I will, absolutely. Yeah, it's
Thank
so
you,
fun.
Susana.
Yeah,
Really
thank
appreciate
you so much,
it.
and thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it.